Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the fascinating and, let's be honest, frankly frustrating hidden architecture of your own mind. You see, our brains don't just passively process reality, they're constantly trying to predict it. We're going to unpack exactly why your predictive brain has this profound love affair with simple stories, and why it is literally hardwired to predictably choose a good, coherent lie over a messy, complex truth. Let's get right into it. Imagine you're scrolling on your phone right now, and two viral posts pop up on your feed. On one side, you've got this headline: Scientists discover human decision-making depends on hundreds of interacting biological, psychological, and social factors. And then, right next to it, the other headline simply says, this one thing controls your decisions. So be totally honest with yourself. Which one are you instantly drawn to click on? If you're like the vast majority of humanity, your finger is probably already hovering over that simple headline. We absolutely crave that singular, straightforward answer. Why? Because a simple answer means immediate uncertainty reduction.
But here's the core problem we face today. The simplest story is usually the most convincing, even when it is completely wrong. This all comes down to something called predictive processing. Your brain desperately wants to resolve uncertainty as fast as possible. So a simple, easily digestible story, that satisfies those predictive mechanisms infinitely better than a messy, nuanced reality ever could.
Which brings us to Section 1, the biological architect, where we pit System 1 against System 2. To really understand our bias towards simplicity, we have to look at how our mental software is actually divided up. As Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman explains, we operate using two main systems. System 1 operates automatically and intuitively. These are your rapid-fire gut reactions that just happen without you even trying. System 2, on the other hand, requires deliberate, slow, and highly focused mental effort. It relies heavily on your energy-hungry prefrontal cortex to do things like solve complex math problems or make massive life choices. The catch here is that engaging that prefrontal cortex literally drains your physical and mental energy. So to conserve power, our wonderfully lazy System 1 frequently just takes the wheel. It jumps to incredibly quick conclusions about causality, and then, get this, it simply makes up a story to confirm those conclusions just so it doesn't have to work too hard. And when System 1 successfully invents that quick causal story, the brain actually rewards itself with a literal dopamine hit, which just cements the habit. Ultimately, this leaves us heavily reliant on heuristics, basically simple mental shortcuts. Unless we actively force our analytical System 2 to step in and examine the evidence, we end up navigating much of our lives on pure autopilot, guided completely by these invisible shortcuts. These heuristics govern almost everything we do, from our first impressions of a new person to our everyday financial decisions, gently pushing us into a very dangerous comfort zone. Let's move to Section 2, cognitive ease and the illusion of truth. Those mental shortcuts we just talked about, they frequently lead us right into a highly deceptive state governed by cognitive ease, sometimes called cognitive fluency. It's a state where predictable, familiar, or just easy-to-compute information actually feels inherently truer than complex or novel ideas. When information is processed smoothly, your brain's associative machine generates this faint signal that makes you feel good. It literally puts a microscopic smile on your face, causing you to blindly trust your intuitions. And the wild part is, these predictable illusions of truth can be triggered by things that have absolutely nothing to do with facts. We're talking about things like repeated exposure to a phrase, clear high-contrast fonts, simple rhyming language, or even just being in a particularly good mood. This is exactly why product marketing and online success gurus exploit clear fonts, rhymes, and endless repetition, because if a message is easy to process, your brain effortlessly stamps it as true. All of this creates what Kahneman calls the WSIATI rule, which stands for what you see is all there is. Your brain will completely ignore the vast, sprawling amount of information it doesn't know, just so it can quickly form a satisfying, coherent picture using only the limited puzzle pieces sitting right in front of it. It's exactly why we inherently crave clear heroes and villains in any narrative, while completely ignoring the incredibly nuanced, complicated gray areas of actual reality. Which brings us to Section 3, Wired for Storytelling, the Evolution of Narrative. Now, this desperate need for coherence isn't actually a glitch or a flaw in our hardware. It's a profound evolutionary survival tool. Cognitive archaeologists tell us that our narrative behavior started way before we even had a fully developed spoken language. Back in the Paleolithic era, early humans had to imagine the sequential steps of crafting stone tools, a process known as the champ operatoire. This crucial ability to sequence steps and envision an outcome paved the way for language and eventually the complex narratives we use today to navigate massive social structures. I love how psychologist Keith Oatley puts this. He notes that just as flight simulators allow pilots to train safely, stories safely train us for the big challenges of human social life. Think about it. When we daydream or simulate social scenarios, a specific brain circuit called the default mode network, or DMN, lights up. This proves our brains are quite literally wired to run these story simulations, giving our mirror neurons a chance to practice reacting to life or death situations without taking on any real-world risk.
All right, Section 4, Stories versus Statistics. How memory processes information.
Because we evolved to learn through these simulated scenarios, our modern memory systems treat different types of data very, very differently. Researcher Thomas Graeber explores exactly how memory processes stories versus raw data. And as it turns out, our hippocampus doesn't just store isolated, objective facts like a computer hard drive. Instead, it organizes memories contextually, as narratives. The story format naturally facilitates the efficient storage and retrieval of information because it's the exact structure our neural pathways actually prefer.
You know how abstract statistics can just cause severe cognitive strain and are instantly forgotten? That's because they're hard to visualize. But vivid stories instantly provide mental imagery, create that beautiful cognitive fluency we talked about earlier, and lock the information right into our hippocampus. Let's be real, we will favor a good, punchy anecdote with explanatory power over a mountain of solid, peer-reviewed data every single time.
But this results in a pretty dangerous trap driven by narrative bias and confirmation bias. Here's what happens. We observe completely random, unconnected events, and our brain feels intense, almost physical discomfort with that uncertainty. So, System 1 swoops in and simply invents a causal story linking them perfectly in hindsight. It's called the narrative fallacy. We look at random events and neatly package them into predictable cause and effect storylines, essentially retrofitting the facts to fit the story we've already invented, and then smugly assuming we knew it all along.
Let's look at the consequences in Section 5, the misinformation trap, our vulnerability in the digital age. While this amazing storytelling mechanism definitely kept our ancestors alive, it has really become our greatest vulnerability today. Cognitive science shows that when trying to explain the world around us, we overwhelmingly focus on visible causes, about 70% of the time, and we almost entirely neglect hidden or absent factors. This is exactly why nuance fails so spectacularly on social media. We want the simple explanation so badly, and we physically cannot tolerate the uncertainty of hidden factors, which heavily biases us toward oversimplified reasoning. Look, our evolutionary hardware simply was not built for a 24-hour news cycle. Because of that, our brains are constantly overwhelmed by modern information overload. Misinformation thrives in this environment because it provides the simple, easily digestible narratives our overloaded brains are absolutely begging for. This makes conspiracy theories and historical myths the ultimate System 1 pacifiers. They take complex, scary, unpredictable global events and reduce them into a simple story with clear bad guys, instantly relieving our psychological discomfort. We'd rather latch onto a simple lie than grapple with the complex truth.
So what do we do? Section 6. Master your mental shortcuts. Protecting our minds.
Knowing all of this, how on earth do we protect ourselves from our own brilliant but incredibly lazy cognitive architecture? Well, think of this toolkit as a deliberate biological override. First, you have to actively recognize when you are in a comfortable state of cognitive ease, like when a headline just feels a little too perfect. Second, consciously pause. Force your prefrontal cortex back into the driver's seat and ask questions. Look for the unseen or absent factors in a story. Ask yourself, what are they leaving out? We have to demand accurate information delivered in clear, concise ways so we can reduce cognitive strain without sacrificing the truth. At the end of the day, our brains are truly remarkable storytellers. But remember, they do this not because they seek perfect truth, but because they evolved to help us quickly make sense of an incredibly complex world. So the next time something seems flawlessly simple, I want you to ask yourself, is this the whole truth? Or is it just the comfortable story your brain wants to hear? Keep questioning the narrative.